Board meeting for Tuesday, November 1st. Welcome to November. It is now 10 a.m. We will start with a salute to the flag. Tracy Moore, where are you? Will you lead us in the pledge? Can you do it?
Yeah, it's been a while, but I think
Just think back. Remember when the teacher asked you. You can do this. It'll be our pleasure to have you lead us. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tracy's going to be receiving an award here in just a little while, and so it's our pleasure to have you do that. Thank you so much, ma'am. All right. Roll call, please.
Von Hartung, Chair.
Here.
Alexis Hill, Vice Chair.
Here.
Bob Lucy is not here. Kitty Jung is not here. Jeannie Herman.
Here.
Fire Chief Charles Moore.
Here.
Chief Deputy District Attorney Mary Canderas. Here. And I'm Chief Deputy Clerk Kathy Smith. You have a quorum, sir.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chief, would you take us into item number 3, public comment, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 3 is public comment. Comment heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the Board of Fire Commissioners' agenda. The district will also hear public comment during individual action items, with comment limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments are to be made to the Board of Fire Commissioners as a whole.
Chief, before I have the clerk call, I just got a notification, tech, that we've got no audio on TV on channel 92 or 93. So do we want to, Commissioners, do we want to take a short recess to let them resolve this? Because do we have public comment, Madam Clerk?
We do.
Okay. Let's go into about a 5-minute recess while tech resolves this so that the public can hear what the commenters have to say.
Having as much trouble with IT as I did with putting the board packet together. There's gremlins about.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I just don't even touch this.
Are we close? Okay, let's move on. Okay. Let's go. Okay, I'm going to bring us back to order. Tech, if you're in the back, we're going to. I don't have my tech yet. I don't think, do we need tech for public comment, Madam Clerk?
You ready to go?
Yes, yeah, let's go. We'll bring us back into order. Go ahead.
Next is, we have Miss Renee Resentis. I'm sorry. Renee Resentis.
Good morning.
I just now got this. I did not receive the email in response to your request. So I just got it. I do guard issue again. Was that feedback?
No, you're on.
Okay. Because this security guard for the primary election did harass me, and he was not wearing a badge. In fact, I questioned whether he was a legal security guard. He was wearing an outdated uniform, very faded. He was not like the others. And anyway, he definitely did not have a name badge. And I was hoping the correspondence was going to include a verbal conversation so I could discuss that. And also, it addresses the media using film media to film in that room. That wasn't my issue. My issue was that they were allowed to use their personal cell phones, and they were videotaping me, and I'm certainly not allowed to have that in that room. So that was my concern, and that's not what is addressed here. So I still would like someone to talk to me rather than put it in an email. I mean, I appreciate the email because it's documented, but I would appreciate so that we could go into what the things that happened verbally. So I also, and I apologize for not having had this. I couldn't find it in my email, so I just got it. And I also want to address, I just started not poll watching, but observing in the ROV processing room again. And so I started yesterday morning. And there's some things that happened in there that my understanding is not following the statutes. I don't have the statutes with me. I have someone looking into it, but there were several things. And then this morning, and one of the things that was very important was the monitors. The cameras weren't working. And when I went to the office and told them, the gentleman I spoke with, Chris, went to Jamie or whoever was in charge and told her, and he came back and said, well, it's not going to be fixed right away. And he said, you can observe on your cell phone. If you, it depends on your, I can't think of the name of it, that you're using. Anyway, I said, well, we're not allowed to use cell phones in that room, so I can't do that. So, and those monitors are there for us, the observers. The one thing I want to get in was that, oh gosh, this is pretty important. So it's,
Let me have staff follow up with you.
please do. Because that was today, something happened today.
I'll have staff
Thank you.
follow up.
I appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you. Madam Clerk,
No one else is signed in?
is there anyone wishing to speak at this time? Okay, I will close public comment and bring it back to the board. Chief, that takes us now to item number 4.
Item number 4 are Item 4 is Commissioners, Fire Chiefs announcements, requests for information, topics for future agendas, and statements relating to items not on the agenda. No discussion among commissioners will take place on this item.
Do you have any such items, Chief?
Just 3 quick announcements. Even though it's in the consent, I want to mention that our December meeting will move from the first Tuesday to the second Tuesday, and that's because our audit does not give us enough time to properly agenda. So they finish that at the end of November, so we need a little more time to put together the staff report for that for you. And today we have a wind event. As you probably noticed when you got here, it's a little breezy, so we always get wind events followed by the precipitation this time of year. And so before the precipitation gets here, there's plenty of time for things to go wrong. So we want to remind people that in wind events to be extra cautious. And then finally, I need to pull item number 10 and an item 8B. We do not have that report in your board packets, and we'll defer that to December.
Okay, so we're pulling item number 10.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Commissioners, anyone? Okay. All right, we will close item number 4. Chief, that takes us to item number 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 5 are consent items, items A through E.
Commissioners, any questions on the consent agenda? Okay. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on consent?
We do not.
Okay, I will close public comment, bring it back to the board. Looking for a motion, please.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the consent calendar.
And I will second it.
I have a motion by Vice Chair Hill, second by Commissioner Herman. We have asked for public comment. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Please affirm your votes. Okay. Chief, that takes us to item number 6, our awards and recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a great success story to present to you today, and I'd like Tracy and her boyfriend, John, to meet me at the podium. Mr. Chairman, on September 4th, John Ferdinand Jr. suffered a sudden cardiac arrest event while at home with his girlfriend, Tracy Moore. And Miss Moore immediately called 911 and began CPR. Engine 42, having cleared a previous medical incident not more than a few blocks from the incident, responded to the scene. On Engine 42's arrival, they found John in a shockable rhythm and working with the crew from Medic 45. After 3 defibrillation attempts and various other ALS treatments, John was converted out of the lethal heart rhythm and was transported by our ambulance to St. Mary's Hospital, where care continued. Approximately 5 days later, John was discharged from St. Mary's Hospital with no deficits. And so this is why we have paramedics on our engines. This is why we love to teach CPR. And we're so grateful that this outcome was successful. So with that, we'd like to present Tracy Moore with the Chief's Medal of Commendation. And Ms. Moore's efforts directly correlated to the saving of a life. And just as a reminder to the public, this is why CPR training is so vitally important.
Hold on. Before you, this is you, sir, that she,
Yes, sir.
You want to say a few words now?
please.
I want to thank you guys for allowing me to say some words. When I first told Battalion Chief Black that I was going to be allowed to speak, I was like, well, I'll make them regret that. And I told him maybe I could give the guys a hard time about their response time. And he's like, well, they were right around the corner, and you actually were very lucky. I'm like, well, scratch that one off the list. And I told my dad, well, maybe I could, tell them they saved the Forrest Gump of society. And my dad's like, that's not fair, John. He's like, Forrest Gump had way more contributions and to society than you. And all jokes aside, I was telling Chief Black that I've never been more thankful to a group of people I couldn't remember, and so very thankful to these guys, and I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Thank you guys for all the people who potentially couldn't. Thank you, and for those who never had the opportunity, thank you so much, and I appreciate being here. So I'm gonna try to remember every day. So thank you for your time, guys. I appreciate it.
No, thank you, sir. And before you present that, Chief, Ms. Moore, your calm demeanor and the fact that you did everything right. And it is so difficult in an emergency. I've never experienced an emergency of this nature. I have been in some emergencies where we were dealing with medical issues, but I've never been in an emergency where you had to stay focused, and you stayed focused, and he's standing beside you today because you did. So I want to thank you. Please come to the podium. If you'd like to say anything, the floor is yours.
Honestly, he might have had a little bit of extra luck. I grew up in a rural area of Alaska and had advanced EMT training and ran with the volunteer squad back home. So it's been about 20 years since everything's expired, but luckily.
A lot of things happened.
Yeah, a lot of things happened. And thankfully to the dispatcher on 911 and the paramedic on the line, they helped to push my panic to the back so that I could focus on the training. So
Again,
I'm just glad it worked.
that's as is everybody
Yeah.
here. We're glad that you're all here to tell the story and had a positive outcome. And I would just remind the community, and I won't take up a lot of time because I do want us to take a picture with these folks. I would remind the community, this is why we have paramedics, trained paramedics on every single unit. And not that other agencies don't, but this is why TM has stepped up, and I believe we were the first in the region to have paramedics on every single unit regardless. And that's an important aspect for our community. Sir, would you like to say a couple more things?
I heard you're responsible for that machine that is riding along with all the paramedics now, and I still feel like a gorilla danced on my chest. But I understand it saved my life, so thank you for making that possible.
You're very kind. Yeah, the Lucas too.
Yeah.
I got lucky. I got lucky because a firefighter, I happened to be at a symposium that they invited me to see these kinds of advances, and I saw it and I questioned what it was, and I thought, man, we need that. So these are the kinds of success stories that just really make me feel good. Chief, proceed, and I really want to take a picture with these folks.
So Tracy, it's my honor. Congratulations. Now I'm getting choked up.
Congratulations. Chief, we're going to go into recess for just a moment so that we can take a picture. Don't run away, folks.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, may I bring the crew down? And,
Absolutely,
give
yeah.
them
No,
their
we want
medals, and then
everybody.
can
We
do,
want a full picture.
group
So I'm
shot.
going to put us into recess, bring the crew down, and we'll do that quickly.
Okay. So crew members, would you come on down, please?
Okay, I'm going to bring us back into order. Chief, I want to thank you for that, for bringing that to us. And we hear success stories all the time, but those are the ones that really make you feel good and bring to the fore why it's so important to have trained firefighters on the scene as quickly as possible.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is absolutely a fact that in an event like this, if you have a trained bystander who's nearby and can start CPR, the chances of your survival go way, way up. So this has happened not just this time, but during the course of my career, I've seen it happen many, many times. So we're so proud of Tracy, and we're so proud of our crew to give the proper care. And one of the hallmarks of our paramedic program is the qualitative abilities that our paramedics have. We don't stop just at Nevada State certification. We go way beyond that. And it's 85% of what we do. So we train on that very, very hard.
No, and my intent was not to highlight our firefighters versus Tracy. I mean, obviously, she held her composure and made sure that she was on the phone as quickly as possible to call for the rescue. And I mean, what a great outcome.
I would also like to mention that this is really a system. It's the hospital care. It's the dispatchers who remain calm on the scene, and it's a whole system. It's a whole EMS system.
Yes.
That caused John to be with us today. So,
Point well taken, Chief. Thank you so much. Well, again, congratulations on that, both of you. Chief, go ahead.
So I would like to present to you the names of the crew members. Captain Sean Haywood is not with us today, but firefighter paramedic Ryan Rudder, firefighter Nick Welsh, firefighter paramedic Chris Perham, and firefighter paramedic Trent Suarez, each getting a meritorious conduct medal, and we're so very, very proud of them. So.
Thank you, sir.
Well done, gentlemen. Could not be more proud.
I think the cat got their tongue, so we'll just let them smile. All right.
Okay.
Gentlemen, thanks.
Chief, that now takes us to item number 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 7 is the International Association of Firefighters Local 2487 report. And it looks
I see
like Jamie Rivera
Jamie.
is here.
Good morning. Good morning.
Welcome.
Good to see you guys. Jamie Rivera, Vice President, Local 2487. Walsh couldn't be here because he had some kid issues, so you get to see my face. Really nothing to report. Just here to ask if you guys have any questions for us. Other than that, it's going to be November, so you'll start seeing a couple facial hairs on a couple of you guys here for the Movember stash. I know it's ugly right now, but thanks.
Thank you so much. You're right, it is. It's Movember.
But do you guys have any questions I can field?
Any questions for Mr. Rivera?
Cool.
Okay.
Well, it's good seeing you guys, and hopefully we have some more to say on December.
Thank you, sir.
Take care. Have a good one.
Chief, item number 8.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 8 is the Fire Chief's report. Item A is informational briefing on operational matters and activities for the month of October 2022 and November 2022 to include the following items 1 through 4. So an update on green waste. It's been used quite heavily. We're well over 850 loads, and we still have a couple of more events coming in December. I'll transition into open burning during the month of December and all the month of December, and most likely the entire month of March. We do have large lot property owners that it's not very efficient to bring their green waste for mastication. So people that live in the rurals Particularly, their volume is too much just to transport it, so we have to allow them to burn their waste. So Chief Eisenhagen and Adam Mayberry will, of course, make those announcements on our website, but largely it's 1 acre or greater. And in the hydrographic basin, it has to be at least 2 acres to be able to burn. So that requires a permit. It's not onerous to fill out. You just have to get on our website and fill that out and watch every day, because we watch the weather like a hawk when we make sure that there's no wind events coming, and if we do see those coming, then we don't have open burning on that particular day. The other reason why we like people to burn in place, particularly if they have invasive weed species, because if they do put them in their truck and bring them, those seeds tend to propagate as their truck drives down the highway, and so we get a spread of invasive weeds. So we do use our burn box on some of the larger materials, particularly large stumps, and our burn box is very effective in producing very, very little smoke when we finally do burn the materials that we can't masticate. On item 3 on capital projects, I want to mention that our C of O has been issued for Station 46, so we now have 6 bedrooms at Station 46 and comfortable quarters now for our medic unit to respond out of there. So around the clock, we will have 5 firefighters on duty, 2 on the medic and 3 on the engine, as well as that crew complement at Sun Valley and also at Station 32 in Eastlake. The house remodel at Station 37 is well underway. We expect that to be completed by January 10th. The transition to the house is going to be a little bit complicated. We need to figure out what we're going to do with the old modular. So commissioners, if you have some ideas, I've thought perhaps Habitat for Humanity might be able to use it, or if there's some other charitable use that we could offer that to, I'm all ears. I can certainly talk to Manager Brown about how it might be able to be put to good use, because it's in very, very good shape.
You know, Chief, I'm thinking, and I don't want to deliberate on this because we're not really styled to do this, but we can certainly have Manager Brown talk to you. We may be able to use that over at the CARES campus.
Mm-hmm. Certainly.
Yeah.
So we'll be in a position to remove that sometime between January and I think June.
Okay, that's great.
So while we're on the subject of Station 37, I handed out this little site plan. So the areas to the left of the yellow line are the new construction that will commence sometime around the summer. That includes the apparatus bay, the crew offices, all of their rooms that they need to service their tools, some area for the public, fire sprinkler riser room, and then, of course, the entrance to the fire station. What you don't see there, of course, is the parking lot that will be developed off to the left. And so this is the phasing of this project is a little bit complicated, but nevertheless, the housing portion will be able to accommodate a full-service fire station while we're building the new apparatus bay. So the solution was a bit elegant on this. And I also wanted to point out where we're headed with interest rates. So we've been in close contact with John Peterson, our bond consultant, and he gave us a prediction of where we think bond prices are going, and they're certainly not going down. But the delta between what we finance for Barron Way and what we'll probably finance for the new stations might be, I don't know, maybe 1.5%, which isn't terrible. So our exercise now is to do our due diligence on our financial forecasts, and we expect that Eugenia Larmore will come in either January or February and give you the forecast. But we're going to need to move ahead with the debt commission, and we're going to have to take a little bit of a high guess on the amount that we're going to need to finance and probably sell bonds that are less than the amount, but we don't want to underestimate the amount of financing that we need. We can get approval for $15 million, but only use 10 when we issue the bonds. So that's our strategy, is we're moving a little slow on the architecture. And so we won't know precisely the cost of the fire stations when we go to the debt commission. So when you see us ask for a high number, that's really the reason why, is that we'll bring that number back down when we know the precise cost. And, excuse me, and we're still moving forward on the Consolidated Station with architectural work. Been in contact with Apple quite frequently, and so the plan then, when we start construction, is Station 37, the Consolidated Station, and Apple will all happen in sequence within a few weeks. So when the foundation's done on one, they move to the next fire station and work on the foundation, and then on to the third station. So it should work fairly well to where the trays will just come right behind one another, and hopefully the construction will go fairly quick. So we're looking at starting again in the summer of June 23, and then having those projects done by the summer of 24. So everything's moving a little bit slow. We've had some supply chain issues with the residents at Station 37, but we're actually thinking of ordering materials well ahead of when we actually start. This is why the CMAR process is so good for us, as we can forecast, and they can work with the architect along as they're developing their design. So if we know we need a piece of steel that's a certain size, we can order that way ahead of the construction actually starting, so we can keep things moving on track, if that makes sense. And then finally, we've had some citizens concerned along the Mount Rose corridor about evacuation routes. And I've asked my staff to take a look at this. Particularly, they have expressed a desire to want to go south out of Callahan Ranch, Fawn Lane area. Chief Eisenhagen's put together a PowerPoint, and we have some information to present to you. We've done actually a lot of research on this, including data from the National Weather Service. We've run simulations on computer simulations where the fire is going to potentially burn along Mount Rose. And then we want to start some community dialogue, probably after the holidays, I think after January, when people aren't so busy with the holidays, and we'll start some community meetings. I've been talking to the emergency manager about investing in some new software to help people understand where the fire is, where it's burning, and their evacuation routes. So we're also working on that component. So without further ado, I'll let Chief Eisenhagen take it away.
Chief, welcome.
Good morning, thank you. For the record, August Eisenhagen, Division Chief, Truckee Meadows Fire and Rescue. As Chief mentioned, I'm here this morning to talk about evacuation route locations. This summer we had the Joy Fire off Joy Lake Road. We had the Kinney Fire over by Windy Hill. 3 summers ago we had the Rock Farm Fire between Mount Rose Highway and the Arrow Creek community. Numerous starts up around Whites Creek and Thomas Creek, and we've had more active than normal seasons the last couple of years. So that has spurred a lot of good conversations with the communities over the last 9 months. A lot of concern over evacuation routes, what's feasible, what isn't. And so the intent today is to provide all of you and the communities in general with some education in terms of which evacuation routes we're typically going to recommend people use, and that not all evacuation routes are created equal. And we'll dive into the why behind that as we go through the process. The main reason why not all evacuation routes are created equal is due to our winds. Everybody that is from here is familiar with the fact that we have a lot of wind in the region across Washoe County. That's typically decided by two wind events. One is our Washoe Zephyr that Mark Twain named. That is our predictable afternoon breezes that kick up 2, 3 o'clock every afternoon in the summertime. What's happening there is as the Great Basin heats up during the day, that hot air goes up in the atmosphere, cool air from over the Sierras comes in to replace it. And 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock every afternoon, we get those downslope west winds. So that's one phenomenon. The second phenomenon is, as Chief mentioned earlier, in front of our cold front passages. So in the next slide, you'll see air rotates counterclockwise around a low pressure system, and they always approach from the west. Low pressure systems are synonymous with our winter storms. Because the air rotates counterclockwise around it, as that low pressure system or that cold front comes into our area, winds always are out of west, southwest, south, somewhere in that 90-degree range, that's the direction they're coming from. And those are the scenarios where we get our 70, 80, 100-mile-an-hour wind events tied to a lot of these fires. And the reason that I show these perimeters on the slide, what you see up here, we have the perimeter mapping for Poville, Collin Ranch, Pine Haven, Little Valley, Beckworth, Tamarack, and Caldor, all fires that have been close to home for us. And what we're trying to emphasize here is they all basically have the same footprint, right? They all start somewhere to the southwest and then actively burn towards the northeast. So with that, when we talk about fire behavior in general, but very specific to the evacuation routes, as you see in the middle picture, our areas of concern are those communities that are against the foot of the Sierras. And the reason there is to the west and to the south of them, there is just open wildland fuels. The communities butt up right against them. So the flame front that's coming with those big wind events is approaching those communities, right? If you take, good scenario, if you take a Hidden Valley community, right? On the opposite side of the urban area, any wind-driven fire coming from the southwest is burning away from the community. Whereas these communities on the west side of the county, fires burning into it. So that's what we want to focus on when we talk about evacuation routes. Generally speaking, for those communities that are highlighted in green, evacuation routes that orient and take citizens to the west or the south, 99% of the time are not going to be desirable. We did do some simulations. Well, let me back up for a second. What you see on the right is a wind rose provided by Chris Smallcomb with NWS, and that's at the Galena Weather Station. And what we're seeing there is it goes hand in hand with the middle picture. Those bars that radiate out from the center, those are relative to the direction of the wind that it comes out of, right? So the bar that sticks out down at the bottom left with the dark red, that's southwest. The bars that stick straight up are north. The bars that stick straight out or straight to the right are east. So that correlates with the direction that the wind is coming from, how often, based on the hours of the day, across this is an 11-year period. And then the color coding is the strength of the wind. And as we can see, the areas with the dark red, that's the 20-plus mile-an-hour winds, those are always out of the west-southwest, which correlates to what we're talking about with fire behavior. The middle image with the green areas that are the communities that we're most worried about. So evacuation routes out of the green areas towards the south-southwest are generally not desirable. And so we discussed how to effectively communicate this to the citizens. We decided to do some simulations on some computer systems, as Chief Moore said. We got the data from NWS. We did the simulations with a fire behavior analyst, which is a member of an incident management team, and all they do is try to predict the how, what, where, when, why that a fire burns with all the inputs, weather, topography, and fuel. Then we vetted what we were looking at with the fire behavior analyst and also an IMET, which is an incident meteorologist that focuses on nothing but weather and fire behavior. A couple assumptions that we need to specify before we go into it. To make those simulations work correctly, we have to assume that it's a continuous fuel bed. For this scenario, there's been a lot of discussion around Callahan Ranch, Arrow Creek, Joy Lake Road, and Fawn Lane. Fawn Lane has been a discussion point lately, so we picked that as a good example to show. The assumption there is that it's a continuous fuel bed of brush, because that is our primary fuel out there. Another assumption, when we go through these simulations, and you'll see videos, we ran one with fire approaching from the 4 primary cardinal directions with associated wind. The only difference between the models that you will see is the wind direction. That said, winds that come out of the north and winds that come out of the east typically have cooler temperatures and higher relative humidity because it's pulling air from further north, further from the equator. So the fire spread that you see in the north and east wind is overstated. It's still very minimal compared to the others, as you'll see, but even what you see is overstated. And then the last one is there's no way for us to effectively model the winds from a thunderstorm, its input on fire behavior, because it depends on the exact location of the storm as it starts to collapse. So those are our assumptions. Oh, too far, apologies. Looks to be working. So these are our two simulations, one simulating fire approaching from the west. So if you look at the picture, the fawn, it's going through, on the left video, it's going through Callahan Ranch right now and just about to impact Fawn Lane. And that was one of the discussion points for the secondary egress route out towards Callahan Ranch. The left video is fire simulations of behavior with a start over by the entrance to Montreux as it runs through the community with west winds. The right-hand video is a scenario where it starts in the hills above Callahan Ranch and Fawn Lane, and as it spreads down into the homes from the east with an east wind. This is pretty in alignment with what we expected to see. We expect our more catastrophic fires to again spread from the west-southwest and our less catastrophic fires to start from the north and east. How this pertains to the evacuation route discussion is that in this scenario, if homeowners on Fawn Lane were to, in the left-hand scenario, our west winds, if homeowners on Fawn Lane were to try to access Callahan Ranch to get out to Mountain Rose Highway, they are going into the more active flame front. Conversely, on the right video, those flame lengths and intensities are minimal. We might not even ask for evacuations, case dependent in those scenarios. Even in that scenario, if we try to put in evacuations, our primary route is going to be that we want them to go up to Mount Rose Highway and out. Those scenarios, depending on defensible space and home hardening, it may be more effective to shelter in place. Again, scenario dependent. One of our main concerns with this specific scenario is if those homes on Fawn Lane try to exit out Callahan Ranch, they now have added to the traffic of Callahan Ranch proper trying to evacuate Callahan Ranch Road. Those roads will eventually connect down to Washoe Valley and Pleasant Valley if you go through the maze of gates and access roads. We're also trying to show that in these scenarios, that is not the way that you want to go because you're going towards the more active head fire. So again, left is a west approaching fire, right is an east approaching fire. Here we have a south approaching fire on the left and a north approaching fire on the right. Again, this shows exactly what we're trying to communicate to the community, that any evacuation route, not just the Fawn Lane one, but any of those coming out of Callahan Ranch, out of Joy Lake Road, that head towards the southwest are not the direction that we want people to go. This would be a good simulation for like a Washoe Drive fire as it comes out of Washoe Valley and gets established. Both the south and the west scenario, we would be predicting flames of 15 to 20, maybe 30 feet, a wall of fire. The north and east approaching fire, we're talking more 4 to 8 foot flames. So substantial difference just on the direction that it's coming from with the wind. This is the south simulation on the right again, and some drone footage of the Fawn Lane piece, and it overlooks Callahan Ranch. So this is to simulate if you were to try to go out this road as fire's approaching from the south, it's an example of what the road looks like on the left and what you're driving towards on the right. And we're trying to reiterate to the communities that that is not where we want you to go. That brush, some of the bitter brush up there is probably 5 or 6 feet tall. Again, we're predicting maybe 20, 30-foot flames. When fire's coming from the south or the west, the roads you saw have spurs coming off of them and thick smoke. It would be very easy to get disoriented, take a wrong one, and end up in the middle of the green. So this paints the picture also in our brain of why you wouldn't want to be taking those roads going into that in this fire scenario. This is a still shot up above Callahan Ranch, and this is on the left, sorry. On the right, it shows that same fire behavior, that same model that's coming from Washoe Valley. And this is to try to implant with the public the vast distance that they would be looking at crossing through in wildland fuels that haven't burnt with that flame front coming at you. So the picture is you're oriented looking south. You can see Little Washoe Lake in the middle of the picture. And that's the direction that the flame front is coming from in the video on the right. Again, those are our most catastrophic ones. So in conclusion, again, communities in Washoe County that border against the wildland fuels, particularly at the base of the Sierra Mountains, those are at heightened risk. We want those communities to be aware when they're talking about planning and evacuation routes, whether it's West Washoe Valley or Arrow Creek or Verdi. If the evacuation route orients to the south, southwest, or west, 95% of the time, that's not the way you want to go because it's taking you towards the more active fire. In wind-driven fires approaching from the north or east, sheltering in place may be the best option if you have defensible space and home hardening in place. And then as we have lots of discussions with the communities, we are trying to reiterate, we would rather see energy and focus. We would rather, if we're talking about evacuation roads specifically oriented in those directions, we would rather see those efforts put into defensible space, home hardening, planning for traffic control, because that's where it really gets gummed up, and communicating with your neighbors on the human element, the human behavior piece. All of our scenarios that have been in the WUI over the last few years, when we've called for evacuations, huge numbers of people either refuse to leave or they go out to watch the firefight in the aircraft and they gum up the evacuation routes and egress or access for our emergency responders, slowing down the evacuation and hindering our suppression efforts. And that is all I have to present, unless there's any questions.
So let me ask you a question, Chief Eisenhagen, and Chief Moore. Are we thinking about putting out a formal evacuation plan? So in other words, to these folks who live in the areas that you've outlined, you say, look, and I understand. I mean, I get this. It's predicated on where the fire is coming from and where it's trying to go to. I mean, I get that based on wind events. But is there some way that we can articulate to residents that what you don't want to do is get off on these on these dirt roads where we've got another rescue potentially that we've got to deal with. Are we thinking about pushing out an evacuation plan?
You want me to cover that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, not only a plan, but lots of communications and meetings with the public. What we noticed at the Joy Lake fire where we had the home burned down, we called for evacuations because the fire was spotting ahead.
Yes.
Had that fire happened, I think a week before we got those heavy rains, it would have been a crowning fire and probably would have done significant destruction to the Galena Forest community. But people need to understand the risk because we have a timing problem. We don't want people evacuating when we're trying to get in.
Sure.
That's the worst. Sometimes we want to protect in place, and sometimes we need, if we're going to evacuate a community, we need them out before we bring in significant resources because once we deploy hose, we can't have citizens driving over that hose because it stops the whole suppression effort.
Of course.
So there's a lot of dynamics in place here, and so lots of conversations. Particularly, I remember the Rock Farm fire that burned into Arrow Creek. Chief Kukulis at the time was busy trying to get people to not park on the evacuation routes and to actually leave because they were busy watching the large aircraft coming in. And it's fascinating, I get that. But
Spectators.
It's not helpful to the suppression effort or to the individual's safety to stick around. We want to stress through lots of conversations that you need to leave. Law enforcement will have a heavy presence within the communities to safeguard their homes. But these conversations need to happen. And then finally, I'll add that I'm working with the emergency manager on some new software that we can push out a link to people's phones and they can press on that link and see updated information, evacuation routes, where the fire started, where it's potentially going to burn, and all kinds of other pertinent
I like
information.
that,
they may
yeah.
need.
I was thinking of a hard copy that was laminated, but I think it's more prudent. But that also presupposes that, and correct me if I'm wrong, you don't know that my phone lives there. So somebody has to physically sign up with a phone number to say that's, that they live in the area.
Right. Chief, anything to add to what I said?
No, in terms of a concrete laminated document that we can hand out, we're working on, I'll call it a pilot program for basically this community, because we've had lots of other discussion on gates.
Right.
Just in that screenshot where you watch the simulations, there's over 40 gates
Wow.
on the different access and egress routes. So we're trying to put together what that looks like for a document that the community can have in terms of a map on one side
Right.
with all the gates labeled, and then on the back side, what kind of lock is on the gate and who they can contact if they need that opened in these scenarios. That's still in its infancy. We've been working on it since this summer, but
I'm
that's in
concerned.
alignment with what you're asking.
I would be a little concerned with that of who you could contact. I mean, you've got an emerging fire and somebody go up, and unlock a gate. They might not even be available, so that's a little iffy for me. But I don't know what the answers are. I'm not suggesting I do. I'm glad that we're at least thinking about this, that we're not gonna, plan after the fact, because that's typically what happens. And so I'm pleased that we're at least looking forward and playing these moves out to say, okay, these are the possible scenarios, and how do we deal with that? And that's admirable. Thank you. Commissioners, anyone else? Yeah, go ahead, Vice Chair.
Yes, I just want to reiterate, I really appreciate you looking into this. I know in Verdi, this is a very big concern, and there's roads that may be more pedestrian roads that actually can fit a vehicle, and questions of whether those should be used. And so thank you for looking into this and seeing how we can communicate it. And I know that in the Verdi area, at least, there's a lot of HOAs, and that may be another way to talk to people, is, to get in front of their HOA and, meet them where they're at. So if you need any help with that, I'm sure that we can help facilitate. Thank you.
And I'm happy to have this same discussion with any of the HOAs if they ask any of the commissioners.
Wonderful, thank you.
I think this is potentially a pilot where, there's a lot of communities that we could apply this same type of thought process to. So I think this is great. Okay, this is not an action item. Thank you so much, Chief.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Anything else, Chief, on item number 8?
Chair,
Yes.
we do have somebody signed in for public comment on this item.
It's not an action item. All right, Mr. Daly.
Sometimes they are and sometimes they're not. That's why I asked. Tom Daly for the record, States at Mount Rose. All of the areas just discussed are in my neighborhood. The Washoe Drive fire was behind my house. The Rock Farm fire was across Mount Rose Highway from my house, both less than a half a mile. If Mount Rose Highway East is not available for evacuation, and on 2 occasions in my experience, wildfires have blocked Mount Rose Highways East, that is the only way out. Unless there's a dirt road through Rock Farm to Saddlehorn to Thomas Creek Road to Arrow Creek Parkway. These are county streets, not private roads. They are poorly marked, they are not illuminated, and if you've never driven it, you'll never find your way out in the dark. This is an area where the county, I know this is not a BCC meeting, but this is where the county should better mark the roads. Evacuation signs in emergencies in hurricane country are routine. Evacuation signs, road signs, could be easily put up for wildfires as well. Thank you.
Okay. So Chief, I did want to kind of go back a little bit because you mentioned something during your chief's report. Tell me again where we have a box in Spanish Springs, we have a box in Washoe Valley,
And Sun Valley,
and in Sun Valley. Are those the only three that we have?
yes.
Are we looking at adding an additional one? Because I'd like to see one out in the North Valleys.
We'll have those conversations with REMS as things progress. I think we're focused on the dispatch piece right now to try to get that solved. But when Dean Dow was here, we certainly did say that we'd like to look at adding additional
Okay.
ambulances. So I don't want to get too far ahead, but yes,
No.
we are looking at that, and it's
Okay.
on our radar.
Again, I just wanted to bring that up. I was going to mention it earlier, but we moved past it. Okay, Commissioners, anything else on item number 8 for the chief? Okay, Chief, take us into item number 9.
Item number 9 is a recommendation to approve termination of the restated and amended lease dated May 24th, 2016 between Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District and the state of Nevada for property known as Station 30 Bowers, located at 3905 South US 395, and authorize staff to send notice of the termination and take action to vacate the structure. So I've met with the state representatives. They know that this will be forthcoming, assuming that you approve this. And we have taken steps to remediate the existing bats, clean up the guano, disinfect the structure, and put it in a condition as best as we can for them to be able to take over. They know that there's going to have to be some rehabilitation of the exterior because there's just far too many places where the bats can enter again. And again, we have problems with rodents. My staff is I'm sorry to be a little graphic here, but we've had rodent feces in kitchen drawers. And this station is 70 years old, and it's not suitable in its present condition for a fire station. The state knows that they'll have to put some money into fixing this place up, but that money is not, I don't recommend us spending that because we don't own the building, number one. So on the short term, to fix up Station 30 for just another 18 months of use does not seem to be a very good use of our financial resources. So therefore, we would like to recommend termination of the lease. We'll move our equipment out. If the state would like to get in ahead of the 6-month termination period, it could certainly bring back an amendment and allow them to come back in sooner. But I think it'll take us about 3 months to move out all of our fixtures and appliances and whatnot, and we'll let the state know when we're out.
Okay. Questions for the chief? All right, this is an action item. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not.
All right, I will close public comment, bring it back to the board. Commissioners, I'm looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to make the motion. I move to authorize staff to send a notice of termination regarding the reinstated and amended lease dated May 2016 between Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District and the state of Nevada, and direct staff to vacate the structure.
I would second that.
Okay, so I have a motion by Commissioner Hill, Vice Chair Hill, second by Commissioner Herman. We have asked for public comment. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Please affirm your votes. Okay, very good. We have removed item number 10. Chief, that takes us now to item number 11.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 11 is recommendation to approve a health benefits program for district employees, dependents, and retirees for an estimated cost to the district of $2.7 million, and authorize the chair of the Board of Fire Commissioners to execute all insurance contracts and service agreements pertinent to the approved health benefits program for calendar year 2023. I'm pleased to report that our increase is only 1.9%, which I think in aggregate dollars is less than $50,000. So this is very, very good news for us.
In an environment of 8 to 14%, that's amazing.
Yeah. So we're thankful for our broker, LP Insurance, who does a great
Yes.
job for us. And
Yeah, they are very good. They are very good at ferreting out a path forward. Commissioners, any questions for staff? Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not.
I will close public comment, bring it back to the board. I'm looking for a motion.
Move to.
I have a motion. Okay,
Yes, a motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Herman. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Vice Chair Hill. We've asked for public comment. Is there any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Please affirm your votes, commissioners. Okay. Chief, that takes us now to item number 12.
Item 12 is the Commissioner and Fire Chief's announcements. Mr. Chairman, I have no additional announcements.
Commissioners, anything from the commission? Okay. Seeing none, I will close item number 12. That takes us now, Madam Clerk, to our final public comment. Or Chief.
The final public comment, as comment heard under this item, will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the Board of Fire Commissioners' agenda. The district will also hear public comment during individual action items with comment limited to 3 minutes per person, and comments are to be made to the Board of Fire Commissioners as a whole.
Madam Clerk.
No one has signed in?
Okay, is there anyone wishing to speak? Okay, we will close public comment. That takes us now to my favorite agenda item. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out. We are adjourned.